Hello, your friendly neighborhood GM, DM here with some TTRPG tips that I wanted to share about things that I've found that I've used throughout my games that have been really helpful, especially lately. Recently, I moved away from doing traditional Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and moved into a different system entirely that is more narrative focused. And so I've been looking for more narrative systems to kind of incorporate into my planning structure and into the gameplay. And there's a couple of really important things that I've found that work really well so far. So for each session, I do an entire segment that is an introduction to the session. I was hesitant at first to really start doing too much in this area because I was worried that my players would get bored or kind of like zone out, or it just wouldn't be interesting enough for them as players because they're not actively doing something, or at least not all of them are doing something at the table, right? So I kind of been slowly incorporating this over time, and it ended up being really helpful, not just for me as a DM, but also for them as players. And I've been told that it really helps them kind of like get into the world space a lot. So the first one I wanted to get into for intros is headlines. So headlines is a segment where I pre-write a bunch of basically news headlines, which can then be read at the beginning of session, that will then be things such as something that references things the players did previous session, right? If it might have made the news, right? If they, caused a building to explode, or they slayed a large dragon or something, right? That would be newsworthy, right? So things that would be able to help the players understand the perspective of other people about what their actions are doing. And also it has an interesting element whereby the players get to hear what kind of spin the local media has, right? Is it, an underground, uprising against, the government? Is it fully, propaganda? It's somewhere in the middle. Like, where's that line lay, right? Can they trust, the local, newspaper, or whatever it is they have? It's a great system to give them a perspective outside of their own little party and have the ripples of what they do seen and felt further. Additionally, headlines can also be used to introduce new elements. So if there are, new characters of, like maybe faction leaders or something that you want to introduce, this is a good way to do that. As well as if there are any quest-like items you want to put in front of the players, but you don't want to push them too hard. Headlines is a really cool way to be able to put little teasers in front of them to see, let them go towards the ones that they feel are the ones that connect best with them. It gives them more of a perception of agency, which is what you really want in this game. Is the players always want to feel like they're in control as much as possible, right? And there's always that balance between DM and player, right? The DM needs to have time to prep and plan and whatnot, but the players want to be able to kind of do whatever they want, right? Additionally, it can also be things that are adjacent to the players, right? So maybe it's something that the players did and then kind of had a ripple chain down the line that then they can see, that second or third degree removed from the specific thing that they did, right? Maybe they burned down a warehouse or something, right? I don't know why all my examples are destruction, but it's PCs. So, but and they burned down a warehouse, and and now maybe there's an article about the head of that organization now having to recoup costs in a different way, and now they're having to shift to a different line of business or something, right? Which also then, as a game master, allows you to now keep this in your head of oh, this is kind of how things are shaping around them that you might not normally be thinking about, right? The second item to talk about for introductions here is remixes. So recaps have been around for a long time. I would say a large portion of tables do recaps, which is great. But what I've been doing recently with this game is I assigned a player the job of doing the recaps. In tabletop games, classes are always a big thing. Find that class balance of a healer and a damage dealer and a tank, whatever, right? But I feel like what is more important than that kind of balance, is having a balance of types of players, right? And one of the types of players that is really important to have is somebody who's doing the note-taking. I mean, everybody should, but someone who's in charge of it and, you know, collecting the data and the analysis of what's been going on, right? The thinker of the group, basically. And that's a really important thing to have as a player, but also it's a cool thing to make as part of your character as well. In my opinion, every party should have a member of the group whose specialty is some form of, you know, note-taking, right? Some sort of chronicling of the tale. It doesn't always need to be a big part of their character, but it's just like, hey, this is the person who's going to be writing our story down, you know, doing journal entries or, you know, what have you. So what we've been doing in our game is I asked one of my players if they would, you know, tweak their character a little bit into having them be a productive writer. You know, one of their goals is to become, to write a novel, basically, which was really cool for them to be able to incorporate into their character, but also it's really cool for the table to have as something available to them. So now, instead of the DM doing the recap or a player even doing the recap, right? Now we're essentially having a character do the recap. So what he's been doing is he's been writing down his daily logs, basically, of what's happening in order to kind of like have it be a chronicle of their journey. And it's done in a first-person angle, so that means that it's all said, you know, like, I did this and me and my friends did this kind of thing, right? And it's really cool for both the player doing it and also the rest of the table to be able to experience the recap in first person and to get that personality right out of the gate. So this means that we're starting off the game with one of the players already immediately getting into heavy character work, basically. It's pre-written, right? Which is helpful for them, for sure. But it's still character work. They're doing their character voice, you know, they have it written in their personality. The way they reference other player characters and whatnot is going to be, you know, based on that character's viewpoint of them. And this has been a really cool thing to be able to do. And I don't know why I never had it happen before, honestly. It's been a huge game changer. It's also less work for the DM to do, which is wonderful. The third thing that I want to talk about for intros is vignettes. So this is something that isn't done very often because most of the time DMs really want to make sure that they're focusing all their content directly on just the players. It's very uncommon to actually see what's happening outside of their little bubble, right? It's almost like a Schrodinger's cat of like, things over there only exist when you actually go over there, right? The idea with vignettes is that you are creating actual full-on narratives about another character that is not the actual player characters, right? Which means you have full control, which is nice. So, for instance, what you will do is you will find NPCs that either the players have already met, are currently, you know, engaged in doing something with, or will be meeting soon in the future, right? So, for instance, a character that they've already met, you know, they helped him out a long time ago, you know, a session or two ago, right? And now we're gonna get to see kind of like the larger long-term results of the actions of the party upon that person, right? How they change their life in, you know, a good way or a bad way, right? And that kind of gives the players a larger sense of scale of the world, and it builds a stronger connection to the people there. So what doing the vignettes does primarily is it makes the players focus on the individual people they're interacting with, because now it's in their head, like, oh, what I do matters long term, right? It's not just like, oh, how do I get what I want from this person? It's like, oh, what impact will I leave behind that's going to last? So also what I've been able to do is sometimes when I had a session where we ended mid-combat, right? And so when we came back, I did a vignette that was focused around one of their combatants, actually, in a way that actually was able to humanize them in a unique way. And I also took what the players did during the first part of that combat session and I made it so that that one particular NPC flipped sides and became an ally of theirs. And so you got their backstory a little bit, and you got kind of like their new motivation and their switch over to being an ally. And this is all in like a page, basically, right? It's just like a minute and a half, whatever, read, and immediately hooks the players into further investment into the fight and into the people in the fight. Additionally, like what I've been able to do with vignettes is, which has been super cool and fun for me as a more of a narrative DM, is I've been able to put things in front of them that are characters they're going to meet, and I've been able to have little small snippets of this character that's going to be a bigger character later on throughout, so that the players know about this, what's happening with character, even if the characters don't know. This is all things that are happening away from the actual characters, right? So they'll never know this unless it's brought up or something. But it's fun for the players to be able to know more than their characters do in a lot of ways. So then they can also facilitate the actions of their characters better. And it's in a meta sense, but that's fine, right? It's not cheating or something like that, right? Like it's fine for the players to know more than their characters. Really, if you notice, all three of these things are heavy investments into the world and the people for the players. Since I am running a more narrative game that's less, dungeon crawling and whatnot, less, stat heavy and all rule heavy, I'm focusing most of my structure around stuff like this that is much more narrative in focus and collaborative world building too, because it's like the recap, I don't do any of that stuff, right? Both the headlines and vignettes are based off of the actions of the player characters. Sometimes it's what I want as a DM to kind of put forward, but like it's usually incorporating things that they've already done or their goals. Here's just 3 quick things for introductions that I've been using a lot that I wanted to share. And I hope that you are able to find these as useful as I have.